questions from this morning's sessions. I have one to start you. I'm sure you've been reading about the trials and tribulations of OpenAI in the last week or so, and as far as can be judged, the clash seems to be a kind of a governance clash, and it's been described as a sort of the opposition of two tribes. One of which is the safety tribe, who are looking at sort of making sure that these tools are used effectively and safely and ethically, and the commercial tribe, the ones who are looking to exploit it in a sort of a commercial way. So, what do you think is is that an effective way of governing generative AI? Do you think generative AI can govern itself? Do you think it needs external governance? If it results in such spectacular fallouts, is it working?
Good luck. Every company is also thinking about ouch.
Yeah, I was involved way back with the Council of Europe when they started their work on data privacy. It was the very first attempt around about 1982, 83, maybe earlier. They started to set a policy for the protection of individual for privacy. And it has taken a very long time for that to get, first of all, into European law. And then there are now about 38 countries around the world which have equivalent legislation, which means you can handle private information from here to Uruguay, just to take one off, and it will be treated the same way as it would in Europe. That took a lot of effort. The only countries that haven't been agreed are China and the United States of America. The USA still has federal control over bits of privacy. What I'm just saying there is that it took a long time to get a consensus about what was private information and how it could be handled. And I think we are trying, I think, with the governance of AI to put the genie back in the bottle when we don't know what the genie is and we don't know what the bottle is. Yeah. And so there's a lot of money being spent, not least by the Turing Institute, to have big conferences to say, this is what we should do. We don't know. We're only a year in to this new environment, though AI does go back a long way. I keep on thinking of, was it Mackey at Edinburgh University? So I hate to say this, I'm not that worried at the present moment, because I think that it will evolve as the uses evolve and as companies become and organizations become more aware. There will be a groundswell, and I don't think it come from the IT industry. It will come from the bigger industry associations, because IT over the years have found it very difficult to agree on anything. That's why we had Token Ring and Ethernet for about 5 years, competing with each other. So I think it will emerge. I'm not as concerned as maybe others are, because I think solutions will emerge. Same with copyright. Copyright's been through many iterations over the years, and it's still not universally agreed. The Berne copyright laws don't appear signed off by the US. So am I being complacent? But I think we're worrying about something that we don't even know what the problem is yet.
It's a remarkably sanguine conclusion. What do you think?
I want to say, add to that, I think then we need to find out maybe more about what the problem is. So I think going to your last point there, and also I don't think we can expect. Well, yes, I think that there are solutions out there, which we will find when we know more what the problems are. But we can't necessarily expect companies to regulate themselves necessarily in that way. Where we've got companies who, if you're talking going back to the kind of OpenAI kind of war that's kind of blowing up, the main concern of a company is to make money, and you have to, I think, kind of think about the governance of these all technology, not just AI, but the kind of actually who it's having effect on, what it's having effect on, rather than just the profits of companies. And so it does require the bigger, wider community to kind of prepare and ask these questions and try and find the answers. And then, yes, hopefully the answers will emerge, as you suggest. but only if we keep asking the questions, I think.
Two comments, just on the OpenAI war. If I'm a large company who's really thirsty for OpenAI, seeing this war erupt, I don't, well, for me, it doesn't put a warm and fuzzy feeling in my stomach. I would say if you're trying to deploy this in your environment, it most likely doesn't. The people like stability when they're when they're purchasing a product. The other thing is there's a lot of different legislation in the pipeline. And the EU legislation looks to put a lot of constraints, or I shouldn't say constraints. It will feel like constraints. That there's it'll greatly. I think it also fits in the evaluation picture as well. It'll force companies to actually take a serious look at what they're actually implementing in their environment, and you could find that out as soon as next year. It's coming pretty fast based on some discussions I had with lawyers earlier this year.
So you think of sort of a top level framework within which organizations
Forced.
Hong, the publisher, do you think that publishers have that kind of role of imposing sort of a framework on responsible use of these kind of AI tools?
Yeah, certainly. The publisher is one of the most important components of the AI is data, right? So the high quality data has come from the publisher. I mean the published peer reviewed the content. So this is one of the problem, and the publisher now is considering, and because many of the AI models, I think they have just grab the content over the internet without consent, or there's a lot of problems. But I think the AI, the governance, so we realize the far behind the AI capabilities from you can see from the investment. So the company invested the billions in the developing the capability, but only the millions or in the AI governance, the framework, and also we don't have fully understand about the AI, the capabilities, the emerging, the capabilities, all this stuff. So I think it's how do we think the ChatGPT AI, it also how can we regulate it? Also depend on which applications we use. For example, for the life critical applications, this definitely we need the very strict the control, the close control. But for the creative, creativity, the creative, the economic, the people that write novel, that write creative, the draw the creative pictures, all this stuff. This I think is maybe is not necessary have the very strict the monitor, because there's a pros and cons for the governance. If you have especially for all the emerging technologies, all experience the same the path. At the beginning, they show the a lot of potential, and also have the people start to worry about the general lot of concerns. But this is a path. So do we really need for this the creativity, the creative, economics, do we really need to have that close the monitor, because close monitor governance may slow down the technology, and because this is one of the debates the people start.
Yeah, can I respond a little bit to that? Because I think it's true. There's obviously it's a different situation when we're thinking about creative and everything, which is clearly creative. I think there does still seem to be some governance. It may be kind of light of touch. It may be kind of much more broader in terms of thinking about things such as being able to know what has been generated by an AI and what has been generated by a human, and who was kind of accountable still for what the AI has generated. Because if the AI generates content which is malicious or toxic or persuades people to do things that they wouldn't normally do because they've read this content that's been generated by an AI, who still needs, I think, some kind of governance, something where you can at least point back to who was it that kind of, how was that generated, that text.
I totally agree, totally agree. And also, for the publisher, I mean, there's in the future, and if the AI, because currently AI is a kind of black box, it's very hard to to reverse engineer to identify which source of data that contribute to this answers. But in the future, once I know there's a lot of the researcher who work in this area to do the expandability and also the tracking the resource, tracking the source. So in the future, let's see if this some the solution and solve this problem. This will also the helps a lot, because for any answers or any generated content, we can reverse back to see which source contribute to this. And then this is also not only the increase the trust of the AI, but also can identify better monitor these problems, toxic or this stuff. Yeah.
It sounds very sensible, but the financial climate in which we live, where people will throw money at solutions of the silver bullet, sort of doesn't suggest that governments plays a sort of a large part in their thinking. Sammy, having worked with commercial organisations, I mean, do you think where do you think the government is going to come in, or are they not bothered?
Well, I think actually that OpenAI did a pretty good job at preventing their models of being harmful. So I think we have other players now in the field that are not that careful with the models, I think. But I also agree with Martin when he said we shouldn't regulate something that we don't really know what will be the issues. And I think the regulation should be more on the application side of AI. So talking about what people are able to do with that and shouldn't do with that, and not so much on the models themselves.
I think one of the problems with law, I think we need to distinguish between what you might call good practice and law. Good practice, you could, assuming someone adopts it, you can sort of do relatively quickly. The trouble with law is that law is only good. It's rather like a patent. You haven't got a patent until someone challenges it in court, and it is said, yes, this actually is novel. And that's the trouble, I think, with if the EU comes up with a legal framework, it will take many years before anyone comes to challenge it, because there will be no precedent, whether you're working under a codified law in Europe or a precedent law in UK and US. It's a long way. I think I see what you mean, Steve. I think it's longer away because it's got to be proved in a court of law, and that's going to be a huge challenge.
I read the policy and the AI governance from the US, from the Europe, and from the China. So I feel this is the different policies, the governance that have the different strategies and focus on different area. For China recently released in August released 24 points, the key points for to governance the AI, the generative AI. So they mainly focus on the monitor and the control the information and the shared. But if in the European, the country Europe, they mainly focus on the safety. They focus on more safety to protect, to protect all the stakeholders, all the society. But on the other hand, the US, I think is more of the soft kind of thing, the governance, because I think the US they understand. They think that if you put too much governance on these new emerging technologies, they may slow down. So I think there's a, their end goal is to encourage this, the technology development. They worry about, if put too much the control on this, it will slow down. So I think this have different, focus, these three countries, is my understanding.
But it sounds good, but I can think of all sorts of counterexamples. I mean, if you think about in the world of search, Google regulates search in many ways that we take for granted. Those results are not unfiltered, and yet there's widespread controversy that Facebook, X, other social media are delivering all sorts of results that people don't want. So maybe you're encouraging technical development is one thing, but if encouraging technical development leads to sort of antisocial and discriminatory results, then that's not so good.
That's why the Google and the Facebook, they spend a lot of money, hired a group of people to keep integrity, all this bias, filter out the content.
Is there an educational aspect of this as well? I've got a couple of grandsons, both 10 or 11, and I'm conscious that when they go into whatever further education, they will be faced with a world that is heavily AI involved. How do we help them gradually through school, through education, to have the skills to recognize when something may be an hallucination, whatever? Because I think with Google, we tended, at least in the UK, just to let people do something because they know they've got it at home. But then we have to teach the teachers how to teach that, and that's quite a complicated one. And I'd like to see more effort at an educational level. Where does this fit into curricula? I'm not wishing to be too specific about it, because I think we've got to start teaching people now, ready for the future as they come. Sorry, I've not.
No, I made a note earlier that the degree of the future is going to be a joint honours computer science and media studies. I'm slightly joking, but I'm also not joking, because I think that ability to think critically about what's on a page or a screen in front of you is going to be hugely, almost more important than understanding programming. Thinking critically is going to be hugely important. So, yeah.
Julie, you have undergraduates coming through every year. So what's your experience?
I think what we've got to do is keep. I'm not actually so much thinking about the undergraduates here coming through in computer science, although I think that probably is true as well. But in terms of going back to the critical thinking and the skills that we mustn't lose in students that are coming through, and it's about not relying on AI, which I think was what you said earlier. It's about teaching them that those other kind of skills are still really important. Kind of being able to kind of ask the right questions and find things out and think critically about things and form an argument rather than relying on an AI to do all of that for you. So we end up in a world where everything, they write their essays based on things they haven't read because the AI's read it. It writes an essay for them, and then the AI marks it because that's doing our job as well as the teachers. And it all seems quite happy because it's but we're losing so much of human intelligence when we do that. So it's about using AI to support human intelligence rather than trying to replace it. And that's what we need to keep encouraging within our education system, is the development of those kind of skills.
And also the AI is not, the 100% accurate. They still need the humans involved to, to make informed decision. You can facilitate the people, the work, and not replace, especially in the, in academic and also the publishing.
Another new name for the group, the BCS Information Retrieval and Media Studies Specialist Group.
But are we faced with a challenge that all pitches made by the AI vendors about productivity? It's going to improve productivity, and the flip side of that is I'm not going to have a job. Now I know that's not true, but that's a top level. If I'm going to be a copywriter, that job won't be there because ChatGPT will do it. The jobs that are at risk are actually the lower end jobs, which start people on a career.
you remind me, this e-commerce, when the e-commerce come, there's, there's many, the offline shop, physical shops that closed down. But all this, move to the, the online shop. So is that when some work is, the disappeared, but some of the new work maybe appear again as well. So maybe when the people, so once the productivity increase, maybe some people, they need only spend the 1 hour to do the whole day's 8 hours work, but then can use, the other 7 hours or the 6 hours to focus in the other more has strategic more important, especially in the publishing, for the editor, instead of they spend the whole day to check, each submitted manuscript or something. Now they can be released to focus more on the, which the new journals I can develop. And which the people, the reviewer editors, or as a researcher with a potential I can talk to, I can connect with. The folks, they can release to focus on more this kind of this.
Nice idea. Any more questions?
I'm a bit pessimistic when it comes to these things like critical thinking and so, yeah. I mean, when the World Wide Web emerged, people said, oh yes, we can now spread information and we can bring down autocratic governments and all these things, yeah, because we can inform people. Now we see what happened, right? We've got conspiracy theories and fake information and the web search. I mean, one of the differences between web search and using ChatGPT is in web search, I'm still required to look at the documents. We talked about provenance today, right? And but still, this doesn't keep us from, or doesn't keep many people from be open for misinformation. And I'm a bit worried when it comes to things like AI, that where we probably don't see where the information comes from, that this problem even worsens, becomes much worse. So I think critical thinking is very important, but we also said that when it comes to the web, right? And we need a huge effort, and not just at universities, but I think much when children go to school, they should learn it. So I think it's a huge task that becomes much more important now than it is already. But I'm not very optimistic about that, at least at the moment.
Grumpy old man.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I think that's right. I mean, one of the things that we've not talked about is all the generative stuff in the pornography industry. For example, I would imagine that's a considerable area for, wealth creation amongst certain groups. The other thing about it is that a lot of the stuff in terms of like supposed social control, we have an incredible number of cameras around the place, people having gathered image libraries from faces, bogus facial recognition from like Clearview AI and what have you. And I think that the difficulty with it is that we live in a world that's going to be full of falsehoods that are going to be very, very difficult to actually work out. Where is your body and your image being used where you don't realize it? Where are you being potentially brought into? You take a look at the articles in the current New Yorker with the stories about the arrests based on bogus facial recognition, which tends to be very poor at doing non-European races. And I think that we're entering an area where having a focus on the rights of people, having primacy, which is what Anu Bradford is pointing out, is the main focus of the European Union, where she describes in her books like the Brussels effect and things like that. where the legislation coming, as you mentioned, very, very rapidly from the AI Act, things like that. You take a look at the recent presidential executive order on AI, that's almost certainly driven wholly by the fact that the Spanish presidency have got the AI and the interoperability acts going through. Unless we actually can turn that sort of stuff into things that everybody understands, we're going to be in a very, very difficult world, because we've already had the weaponizing of fake news, really disrupting the democratic process, the 2 or 3 major elections having been subject to that. And I think it's incumbent on groups like this to sort of highlight, stand up for where we need to be from a societal perspective, shining the light within the magnifying glass on it and calling out things that are poor practice.
I think one of the bright spots I see in this business is the growth of fact-checking services. In the UK, we've got Full Fact.
Yeah.
Many countries now have those.
Yeah.
They link together. They are using
It's a growth
tools,
industry.
AI tools
Yeah.
to identify that. And I think that to me is a really bright spot, that we
Yes.
do have people who are there, independent, funded by, not funded by commerce, but there to say, hold on, MPs, that's a falsehood.
Yeah.
Please retract it.
Yeah, I wonder, because I had a more technical question, but I think now I can inject it without going too far from the conversation. That has been very good. Julie presented all the problems, right, with LLMs, and part of the problem is this disconnection with facts that are registered somewhere. But there are already the paradigm of the retrieval, augmented generation, which is something that Hong had in one of his slides as well. And well, my technical part is that technical question was if you think that also as researchers in information retrieval, that is the paradigm that we need to put our attention on, or is there other things? And I think in connection with what we've been discussing, would we need then for the regulation part of this to sort of ask or mandate that models, LLMs, are used in combination with a knowledge graph or a knowledge base that you can verify in a way to minimize these risks that we have?
Can I just say on that, like retrieval augmented generation, what, like one thing that concerns me there, yes, it mitigates a lot of the problems, but still misses important information. And the way it's currently presented in ChatGPT is that it's presented so much more confidently than you would ever have in a traditional search engine. And me as the user will read it, and most people would just believe it automatically.
But that's an interface problem and education problem, because it's the same as having the provenance in the fake news and people choosing to ignore it because they have a bias or they don't care. And yeah, that's a difficult thing, because you either have to put in the education, right, which is very slow and still many people will choose to ignore, or the other thing that I don't like that much, but it's the one thing that we can do, is say, hey, you Facebook, do something to stop fake news, right? Put me this little button of where this come from. Both approaches are needed, but yeah, the most important is educational, but it's so difficult.
I would say sorry for interruption. I just add one more. This is very similar in the publishing, in scholar publishing. We call the integrity. Research integrity is one of the top challenges. And then because the paper mill is the organizations, they just apply the AI, especially now apply AI to generate the fake papers and the fake authorship to sell it as the generate revenue. So there's an endless battle between the publisher and the paper mill. So we both use apply the AI. The publisher apply AI to detect this, and then the paper mill apply this to generate this. It's endless battle. But what we do is, I agree, first we need, have from ethical, perspective, provide the education guideline to help the research to realize this. On the other hand, we also developed the new technology to detect this. But our goal is to not get rid of it. We cannot. It's impossible. But we want to reduce the profit margin of the paper mill. And then hopefully one day, they cannot make enough money. So they will automatically disappear. So this is something we are working.
It's maybe to counter some of the doomerism, which is very realistic, and I agree with quite a lot of it. I was pretty much the first generation to use a calculator at school in maths. And at the time, everyone was saying, this is terrible. Kids will never learn maths again. Because calculators can do all the hard work for them. Can't have calculators. I remember having an argument, say, can I use my calculator on my maths exam? It was a Sinclair calculator. I had to sit next to a wall socket to plug it in because the battery lasted about 10 minutes. But anyway, and the world didn't end. Calculators are now something that kids have at school, and they tell you to buy this particular calculator and take it in. The other thing is we've got to remember that young people aren't stupid. And I see from my own experience as a parent, my kids are very aware of conspiracy theories. They're very aware not to believe everything they read on the internet. They are more capable than perhaps we think of distinguishing between fake content and real content. Education is absolutely key. You've got to teach them, give them the tools to distinguish that, but they are capable of doing it. We're not going to end up in a future where everyone just believes everything they read and follows every crazy conspiracy theory or fake news down the rabbit hole. I think we have to trust a little in young people to figure this out if they're given the right support and tools. The world won't end. And I do absolutely come back to your point there. You're saying that at the same time we generate the technology to generate the rubbish, we generate other technology to monitor that is actually and tell us it is actually rubbish. And I think that's a very important thing. So these are parallel developments.